The morning sun was just coming up over New York City when the sky went dark. Massive ships appeared above every major city on Earth, their hulls black as space itself. The ships were bigger than anything humans had ever built. Each one was the size of a small city, with strange lights pulsing along their sides like alien heartbeats. Supreme Commander Vextar stood on the bridge of his flagship, looking down at the blue planet below. His forearms crossed behind his back as his red eyes studied the primitive world. This was going to be easy, it always was. "Begin the conquest protocol," he ordered his crew. His voice carried the authority of someone who had conquered 47 worlds before this one. The communication systems came alive. Every television, radio, and computer on Earth suddenly displayed the same message. The aliens had taken control of every signal on the planet. A hologram of Vextar appeared on screens everywhere, his tall gray form imposing and terrifying. "People of Earth," the alien commander began, his words translated perfectly into every human language. "I am Supreme Commander Vextar of the Zephyrian Dominion. Your world now belongs to us. Surrender immediately and your deaths will be quick. Resist and you will suffer as 47 worlds have suffered before you." The alien commander expected screaming. He expected panic in the streets. He expected leaders begging for mercy or making desperate threats. What he got instead was something that had never happened in 200 years of galactic conquest. He got laughter. It started small. A chuckle from a coffee shop in Seattle, a snort from a businessman in Tokyo, a giggle from a schoolchild in London, but it spread like wildfire across the planet. Within minutes, the entire human race was laughing. In the CNN newsroom in Atlanta, anchor Jake Morrison was trying to read the breaking news report when he started chuckling. "Ladies and gentlemen," he said, his voice shaking with barely controlled laughter. "It appears we are being invaded by aliens who look like they stepped out of a 1950s science fiction movie." He couldn't help himself. The alien's dramatic speech, the way he posed with his arms crossed, the serious tone while making threats that sounded like something from a bad movie. Jake burst out laughing right there on live television. "I'm sorry," he gasped between laughs. "But did anyone else notice that this guy talks exactly like the villain from that old space opera everyone made fun of last year?" In Washington, D.C., President Linda Carter was in the Situation Room with her top advisors when the alien message came through. The room fell silent as they watched the hologram deliver its ultimatum. Then the president did something that shocked everyone in the room. She started laughing. "Ma'am?" asked General Chris Brown, the chairman of the Joint Chiefs. "Are you all right?" "Chris," the president said, wiping tears from her eyes, "my 8-year-old nephew could have written a more threatening speech than that. Did you see how he was standing? He looked like he was posing for a superhero movie." Secretary of Defense Kate Williams looked concerned. "Ma'am, with respect, they have massive ships. This could be a real threat." President Carter looked at the screen again, where the alien commander was still making his dramatic speech. "Kate, my daughter went through a phase where she talked exactly like that. She was 12 and thought she was the queen of the world. The only difference is she had better costume design." The laughter was spreading everywhere. In London, Prime Minister Robert Hayes was trying to convene an emergency session of Parliament, but half the members were too busy laughing at memes that had already started appearing on social media. Someone had already taken a screenshot of the alien commander and added the caption, "When you order your alien overlord from wish.com." Dr. Amy Brooks was in her laboratory at the University of California when the broadcast interrupted her research. As Earth's leading expert on the possibility of alien life, she should have been terrified or fascinated. Instead, she found herself laughing so hard she nearly fell off her chair. "Oh my God," she said to her research assistant, Peter Kim. "They're actually doing this. They're actually using the standard surrender or die speech from every alien invasion movie ever made." Peter looked confused. "Dr. Brooks, shouldn't we be worried? I mean, they have really big ships." Amy wiped her eyes and looked at the screen. Again. The alien was still talking, his voice getting more frustrated as he tried to make his threats sound more menacing. "Peter, do you know what this reminds me of? Remember when we were kids and we'd play Alien Invasion in the backyard? This is exactly how my little brother used to talk when he was pretending to be the alien commander. Across the planet, humans were having the same reaction. The aliens had studied human culture. They knew about human wars and human fears. They had prepared for military resistance and diplomatic negotiations. They had plans for dealing with human weapons and human technology. But they had never encountered a species that would respond to their most terrifying conquest speech with laughter. On the alien flagship, Vextar was getting more and more confused. His communication officers were reporting strange signals from the planet below. Instead of military commands or evacuation orders, they were picking up something called memes and social media posts that seemed to be making fun of his speech. "Sir," reported his intelligence officer, "the humans appear to be treating our conquest announcement as some form of entertainment." Vextar's red eyes narrowed. "Entertainment? Explain." "They're sharing images of you with humorous text attached. They're comparing you to fictional characters from their movies. One particularly popular post shows your image with the words, 'Mom said it's my turn to conquer the galaxy.' The Supreme Commander had conquered 47 worlds. He had faced desperate last stands and cunning military strategies. He had dealt with species that fought with honor and species that fought with treachery, but he had never faced a species that simply refused to take him seriously. Increase the threat level, he ordered. Show them images of our previous conquests. Show them what happens to worlds that resist us." But even as he gave the order, Vextar couldn't shake the feeling that something was very wrong. In all his years of conquest, fear had always been his greatest weapon. And for the first time in his career, that weapon seemed to be completely useless. 3 hours after the alien broadcast, Earth had turned the invasion into the biggest entertainment event in human history. What the Zephyrians expected to be a planet paralyzed by fear had instead become a planet having the time of its life. "Commander," Lisa Stone stood in the Pentagon's war room, staring at the monitors in disbelief. Instead of showing military preparations or evacuation procedures, every screen displayed social media feeds filled with alien invasion memes. Her own soldiers were gathered around phones, laughing at videos of people doing dramatic readings of the alien commander's speech in funny voices. "Sir," reported Lieutenant Danny Martinez, trying to keep a straight face, "the internet has officially broken. Every major platform is flooded with alien invasion content. Someone made a remix of the alien commander's speech, and it already has 50 million views." Commander Stone rubbed her temples. "What about actual defense preparations?" "Well," Danny said, pulling up another screen, "the good news is that recruitment offices have lines around the block. The bad news is that most people want to join just so they can get closer to the aliens and take selfies." Meanwhile, in Silicon Valley, tech billionaire Ryan Bell was in his garage with a team of hackers, working on something that would make history. Ryan had always been the kind of person who saw rules as suggestions and impossible as a challenge. "Are you sure this will work?" asked his friend and lead programmer Mike Torres. Ryan grinned as his fingers flew across the keyboard. "Mike, we've hacked into government databases, corporate networks, and that one time we got into NASA just because we were bored. How hard can alien technology be?" "Probably a lot harder than you think," said Sarah Kim, their security expert. "These are beings from another planet with technology we don't understand." "Sarah?" Ryan said without looking up from his screen. "They're using standard radio frequencies to communicate. Either they're not as advanced as they want us to think, or they're being really polite about not scrambling our brains with alien super tech." After 2 hours of work, Ryan's team achieved something that should have been impossible. They broke into the Zephyrian communication network, and Ryan, being Ryan, decided to do something that would be talked about for generations. He rickrolled the entire alien fleet. Every screen on every Zephyrian ship suddenly started playing a video of a man dancing and singing an old Earth song called "Never Gonna Give You Up." The aliens had no idea what they were looking at, but they couldn't turn it off. On the flagship, Supreme Commander Vexitar stared at his command screen in complete confusion. What is this human doing? Is this some kind of psychological warfare? His communication officer, Sub-Commander Zekra, looked equally puzzled. "Sir, our analysts believe this is what humans call a prank." It appears to be a form of humor where someone tricks another person into viewing unwanted content. They're making jokes? Vexitar's voice rose in disbelief. We threaten to destroy their planet and they respond with jokes? Back on Earth, the entertainment industry was working overtime. Movie studios that had spent years making alien invasion films suddenly found their scripts becoming reality. Except reality was much funnier than anything they had written. Director Tom Wilson was in a meeting with studio executives, trying to figure out how to handle the situation. So let me get this straight, he said, looking at the notes in front of him. Real aliens have invaded Earth. They look exactly like the aliens from our B-movies, and they're acting exactly like the villains from our scripts? That's right, said producer Jenny Davis. The question is, do we make a documentary about this, or do we wait and see if it gets even more ridiculous? More ridiculous, Tom laughed. Jenny, someone just hacked alien spaceships to play a music video from the 1980s. I'm not sure it can get more ridiculous. He was wrong. The aliens, frustrated by their inability to scare humans, decided to try a different approach. They began broadcasting what they thought were terrifying images from their previous conquests. Pictures of destroyed cities, defeated armies, and conquered worlds filled every screen on Earth. Humans looked at these images for about 30 seconds before turning them into memes too. The destroyed cities became before and after home renovation jokes. The defeated armies became sports team failure memes. One particularly popular post showed a picture of a destroyed alien city with the caption, "When you let your kids redecorate their room." Dr. Amy Brooks was watching all of this from her laboratory, taking notes and trying to understand what was happening from a scientific perspective. Her research assistant Peter was showing her the latest batch of memes when she had a realization. "Peter," she said slowly, "I think I understand what's happening here." "What do you mean, Dr. Brooks?" Amy pointed to the screens showing the alien broadcasts. "Look at their behavior. They're following a script. A very predictable script that every human has seen 100 times in movies and books. They're doing exactly what we expect alien invaders to do." Peter frowned. So humans don't fear the expected anymore. We've seen this story so many times that it's become boring. It's like being scared by a horror movie you've already watched 50 times. You know all the jump scares are coming. Meanwhile, in restaurants across the globe, something unexpected was happening. Chef Carlos Rivera was running his food truck in Los Angeles when he noticed something strange. There were people waiting in line who didn't look quite human. They were tall and thin with gray skin and large eyes. They were clearly trying to disguise themselves as humans, but they weren't very good at it. One of them was wearing a baseball cap that was way too small for his large head. Another had put on sunglasses, but they covered less than half of his huge eyes. "Can I help you?" Carlos asked the first one in line. The disguised alien looked nervous. "Yes, we would like to try your food." Carlos blinked. "You're aliens, aren't you?" The alien looked panicked. "No, we are completely normal humans. We enjoy human activities like walking and breathing air." Carlos couldn't help but smile. "Okay, normal human, what would you like to eat?" "We have heard about something called a taco," the alien said carefully. "Our research suggests it is a popular human food item. And so, 3 hours after the most serious invasion threat in human history, Earth's first interspecies fast food transaction took place at a taco truck in Los Angeles. The invasion was not going according to plan. 2 days after the invasion began, Supreme Commander Vextar was facing the biggest crisis of his military career. Half his crew was asking questions about human culture instead of preparing for battle. The other half was trying to figure out how to get more of those things called tacos that the scout teams kept talking about. "Sir," reported Subcommander Zekra, looking uncomfortable, "we have a problem. Our psychological warfare division says they need to try a different approach." Vextar turned from the viewing screen where he had been watching humans on the planet below. They were having what appeared to be a massive party in the streets of every major city. "What do you suggest?" "Cultural suppression, sir. We broadcast our superior Zephyrian art, music, and literature. We show them how primitive their culture is compared to ours. It has worked on 17 previous worlds." Vextar nodded. "Do it. Show these humans what real civilization looks like. What happened next would be remembered as the greatest backfire in galactic military history. The Zephyrians began broadcasting their most treasured cultural works, traditional Zephyrian music, which sounded like a mix of whale songs and construction equipment, classical Zephyrian poetry, which consisted mainly of very long descriptions of rocks and gas clouds, and Zephyrian visual art, which was mostly gray geometric shapes arranged in precise mathematical patterns. Humans listened to about 30 seconds of Zephyrian music before someone in Detroit mixed it with a hip-hop beat and created the first human-alien music collaboration. Within an hour, Zephyrian Beats was trending on every social media platform. Marine Captain Tony Martinez was stationed at Camp Pendleton when the alien cultural broadcast began. Instead of being overwhelmed by the superiority of alien culture, Tony did what Marines do best: he organized. "All right, everyone," Tony announced to his unit. "The aliens want to show us their culture. I say we show them ours right back." 20 minutes later, 300 Marines were performing a flash mob dance to human music in the base courtyard. But this wasn't just any flash mob. They were dancing to a remix that combined human rock music with the alien whale construction sounds. The result was strange, energetic, and absolutely infectious. The alien scout ships hovering nearby were supposed to be monitoring human military responses. Instead, they found themselves broadcasting the Marine dance party back to the main fleet. Several Zephyrian soldiers were caught moving to the rhythm, even though they had no idea what rhythm was. In New York City, artist Sophie Davis was spray painting a mural on the side of a building when she heard the alien cultural broadcast. She listened to the strange music and looked at the geometric art patterns being displayed on nearby screens. "Interesting," she said to her friend and fellow artist Jake Thompson. "Their art is very structured, very mathematical, but there's no emotion in it." "What do you mean?" Jake asked, watching the gray shapes shift and change on the screen. "Look at it," Sophie said, pointing at the alien art. "It's perfect. Every line is exactly where it should be. Every angle is precise, but it doesn't make you feel anything." That gave Sophie an idea. She started incorporating the alien geometric patterns into her mural, but she added something the aliens didn't have: color, emotion, human chaos mixed with alien order. The result was stunning. The mathematical precision of alien design combined with the wild creativity of human expression created something neither species had ever seen before. People started gathering to watch Sophie work, and soon other artists arrived to help. By the end of the day, the entire building was covered in a massive collaborative artwork that mixed human and alien styles. Photos of the mural spread across social media faster than the alien broadcasts themselves. But the real breakthrough came from an unexpected source. Chef Carlos Rivera had been serving disguised aliens from his food truck for 2 days. They kept coming back, and they were getting braver about not hiding who they were. On the 3rd day, a Zephyrian officer showed up without any disguise at all. "You are the food human," the alien said in careful English. "I'm a chef, yes," Carlos replied. "What can I get you?" "We wish to learn your food preparation methods. Our nutrition comes from processed blocks that provide all necessary elements, but your food creates—" The alien paused, searching for words. "Pleasure. We did not know food could create pleasure." Carlos smiled. "Would you like to learn how to cook?" An hour later, Carlos was teaching 3 Zephyrian officers how to make tacos. The aliens were terrible at it. Their precise mathematical minds couldn't understand why Carlos used a little bit of this and some of that, instead of exact measurements. "But how do you know how much spice to add?" asked the alien officer, whose name was apparently something like Kextal. "You taste it," Carlos said simply. "If it needs more, you add more. If it's too much, you add something else to balance it out." The concept of tasting food was completely foreign to the Zephyrians. They ate for nutrition, not for flavor. The idea that food could be adjusted based on personal preference was revolutionary. While Carlos was teaching aliens to cook, the cultural exchange was happening everywhere. Human musicians were remixing alien sounds. Alien soldiers were learning human dances. Human artists were creating works that combined both styles. The most surprising development came from the alien flagship itself. Sub-Commander Zekra approached Vextar with a request that had never been made in the history of the Zephyrian military. "Sir," Zekra said carefully, "the crew is asking if we can learn more about human culture before we proceed with the conquest." Vextar stared at his second-in-command. "Learn about their culture? Why?" "Well, sir, they have these things called movies that tell stories using moving pictures and sound, and something called music that seems to create emotional responses. And their food preparation methods appear to be a form of creative expression rather than just nutrition delivery." "Are you telling me," Vextar said slowly, "that my crew wants to watch human entertainment instead of conquering their planet?" Zekra looked uncomfortable. "In simple terms, yes, sir. On the planet below, humans continued to party, create, and laugh. They had turned an alien invasion into the biggest cultural festival in human history. Artists were collaborating with alien scouts. Musicians were creating new genres that mixed human and alien sounds. Chefs were teaching cooking to beings who had never tasted flavor. And somewhere in Detroit, a hip-hop producer was working on a track that would become the first song to be broadcast across 12 star systems. The invasion was becoming something nobody had expected. It was becoming friendship. By the fourth day of the invasion, Supreme Commander Vextar was desperate. His crew was spending more time watching human movies than monitoring conquest progress. His elite soldiers were asking for cooking lessons instead of battle assignments. And worst of all, 3 junior officers had submitted formal requests to defect to Earth so they could attend something called art school. Vextar made a decision that he hoped would save his reputation and restore order to his fleet. He would challenge Earth's greatest warriors to single combat. This was an ancient Zephyrian tradition that had never failed to demonstrate their military superiority. "Attention, people of Earth," Vextar announced in his most commanding voice. "Your resistance amuses us, but now we will show you the true power of Zephyrian warriors. Send us your greatest champions for single combat. When they fall before our might, you will understand the futility of your defiance." In the Pentagon, Commander Lisa Stone watched the challenge with her staff. For the first time since the invasion began, she looked worried. "This could be serious," she said to Lieutenant Danny Martinez. "If they really do have superior fighting abilities, this might be our first real problem." Danny looked at the files on his desk. "Ma'am, we've received over 10,000 applications from people who want to represent Earth in single combat." 10,000? Lisa blinked. "From military personnel?" "Well, no, ma'am. About 50 are from actual soldiers. The rest are from professional wrestlers, mixed martial arts fighters, boxers, and..." Danny looked uncomfortable. "And what?" "Ordinary citizens who think it would be fun to fight aliens, ma'am." Lisa rubbed her forehead. "Please tell me we're sending our best Special Forces operatives." "Actually, ma'am, the selection committee chose 3 representatives based on what they called maximum entertainment value. They said if we're going to fight aliens, we might as well make it interesting." The 3 humans chosen to represent Earth were not what anyone expected. The first was Jake Williams, known in professional wrestling as Thunder Jake. Jake was 6 feet tall, weighed 250 pounds, and had spent 15 years throwing other large men around wrestling rings for the entertainment of crowds. He was strong, tough, and completely unafraid of anything. The second was Nina Rodriguez, a mixed martial arts champion who had won 12 professional fights and taught self-defense classes to anyone who wanted to learn. Nina was 5 feet 6 inches tall, weighed 140 pounds, and could disable opponents twice her size in under 30 seconds. The third choice surprised everyone, including the aliens. Betty Clark was 85 years old, stood 4 feet 11 inches tall, and weighed about 100 pounds soaking wet. She had raised 5 sons, run a daycare center for 40 years, and volunteered at the local community center teaching self-defense to senior citizens. When asked why she wanted to fight aliens, Betty said, "Honey, I've dealt with cranky toddlers, teenage boys, and drunk husbands. How hard can aliens be?" The combat trials were set to take place in a large stadium in Las Vegas because, as the selection committee explained, if we're going to have the most important fights in human history, We might as well do it somewhere with good entertainment facilities. 50,000 humans packed the stadium. Another billion watched on television and internet streams. The Zephyrian fleet positioned itself overhead to witness the demonstration of their superiority. The first combat trial matched Jake Williams against a Zephyrian warrior called Vecmore the Destroyer. Vecmore was 7 feet tall, had 4 arms, and wore armor that looked like it could stop a tank shell. The fight lasted about 3 minutes. "You know," Jake said as he circled his opponent, "in wrestling we call what you're doing selling the character. You look scary, you act tough, you make big threats. But I've been doing this for 15 years and I can tell when someone doesn't actually know how to fight." Vecmore charged forward with all 4 arms swinging. Jake stepped aside, grabbed one of the alien's arms, and used basic wrestling techniques to flip the 7-foot warrior onto his back. The alien's armor made a loud crash as he hit the ground. "The problem with armor," Jake explained to the stunned crowd, "is that it makes you slow and clumsy, and all that intimidating posing doesn't mean much if you don't know how to actually use those 4 arms." Jake pinned Vecmore in less than 30 seconds using a standard wrestling move. The alien tapped out, which apparently meant the same thing in Zephyrian culture as it did in human wrestling. The second fight was even shorter. Nina Rodriguez faced a warrior called Texra the Swift, who was supposedly the fastest fighter in the Zephyrian military. Texra had 6 legs and moved like a spider, which should have given her a huge advantage. "Speed is good," Nina said calmly as Texra danced around her. "But speed without technique is just running around really fast." When Texra finally attacked, Nina used the alien's own momentum against her. A simple judo throw sent the 6-legged warrior flying across the ring. Texra landed hard and didn't get back up. "Mixed martial arts teaches you to use your opponent's strength against them," Nina explained to the cameras. "Doesn't matter how many legs you have if you don't know how to land properly." The third fight was the one that would be talked about for generations. Betty Clark faced the Zephyrians' ultimate champion, Zaxel the Terrible, a warrior who had supposedly never been defeated in over 200 battles. Zaxel was 8 feet tall, had armor made from some kind of alien metal and weapons built into his arms. The crowd fell silent as the tiny elderly woman walked into the ring to face the massive alien warrior. "Hello, dear," Betty said pleasantly to Zaxel. "My name is Betty, what's yours?" Zaxel was confused by the polite introduction. "I am Zaxel the Terrible, destroyer of worlds, crusher of—" "That's nice, dear," Betty interrupted. "But didn't your mother teach you any manners? You should introduce yourself properly before a fight." The alien warrior was so flustered by being scolded like a child that he completely forgot his combat training. When he finally remembered to attack, Betty was ready. She had taught self-defense to senior citizens for 10 years. She knew that when facing a larger opponent, you didn't try to overpower them. You waited for them to overcommit to an attack, then you used their size and aggression against them. Zaxel charged forward with a roar that shook the stadium. Betty stepped aside at exactly the right moment, stuck out her walking cane, and watched the 8-foot alien warrior trip and crash into the stadium wall. "Rule number 1 of fighting," Betty announced to the crowd. "Never let anger make your decisions for you." This poor boy got so worked up that he forgot to watch where he was going. Zaxel tried to get up, slipped on his own cape, and fell down. Again. The crowd burst into laughter and applause. Betty walked over to the fallen warrior and helped him sit up. "There you go, dear. Are you hurt? You took quite a tumble." The sight of an 85-year-old grandmother helping up the galaxy's most feared warrior while asking if he needed a Band-Aid was broadcast across 12 star systems. On the alien flagship, Vextar stared at the screen in complete disbelief. His 3 greatest champions had been defeated by a wrestler, a martial artist, and a grandmother who treated combat like a teaching opportunity. "Sir," Subcommander Zekra said quietly, "perhaps we should reconsider our approach to this conquest." Vextar had run out of ideas. His psychological warfare had failed. His cultural superiority had failed. His military might had failed. And now his warriors were asking Betty Clark for self-defense tips. The invasion was not just failing, it was becoming embarrassing. After the combat trials, Supreme Commander Vexitar faced the most humiliating situation in Zephyrian military history. His elite warriors were in the medical bay asking for autographs from Betty Clark. His crew was watching human movies instead of monitoring battle stations, and 3 of his best officers had submitted formal requests to transfer to Earth permanently. Vexitar made one last, desperate decision. He would meet with Earth's leaders directly to arrange an honorable surrender that would allow both species to save face. He was a military commander, and military commanders understood each other. Surely he could negotiate some kind of reasonable settlement with Earth's military leadership. He was about to discover that humans had a very different idea of what constituted reasonable. The meeting was arranged at the United Nations building in New York. Vexitar arrived with his most serious diplomatic advisors, expecting formal military negotiations. Earth sent a delegation led by diplomat Helen Parker, who had 30 years of experience in international relations and a reputation for handling difficult personalities. Helen walked into the meeting room and immediately noticed that the aliens looked nervous. Vexitar was sitting very straight in his chair, his forearms crossed in what was probably meant to look authoritative, but mostly looked uncomfortable. "Welcome to Earth, Commander Vexitar," Helen said with a smile. "I hope your stay has been educational." "Your planet has not responded as expected," Vexitar replied stiffly. "We came here to offer you a place in the Zephyrian Dominion. You have refused our generous terms." Helen looked at her notes. "I'm sorry, but I think there might have been a translation error. When you say generous terms, are you referring to the part where you threatened to kill everyone on our planet?" "That is standard conquest protocol," Vexitar explained. "Quick, death for those who surrender, prolonged suffering for those who resist. We have used this approach successfully on 47 worlds." "I see," Helen said thoughtfully. "And how did that work out for you on those other worlds?" "The population surrendered immediately and accepted Zephyrian rule." "So they gave up without a fight?" "Correct." Helen nodded. "Commander, can I ask you something? What exactly did you think you were going to do with 47 planets full of people who gave up the moment things got difficult?" Vexitar looked confused. "We would rule them efficiently. They would provide resources and labor for the Dominion. But what about creativity, innovation, problem-solving, art, music, all the things that make a civilization actually worth having? Those are unnecessary complications," Vexitar said. "Efficient resource extraction and population management are the only requirements for a successful conquest." Helen exchanged glances with the other human diplomats. "Commander, I think I'm beginning to understand the problem. You've been conquering worlds full of people who were too scared to think. But scared people don't create anything useful. They just do what they're told." The meeting was being broadcast live to both the human population and the Zephyrian fleet. On Earth, people watched with amusement as their diplomat calmly explained to an alien commander why his entire approach to galactic conquest was fundamentally flawed. "What we're dealing with here," Helen continued, "is a management philosophy problem. You've built an empire based on fear, which means your subjects never develop beyond basic survival mode. That might work for simple resource extraction, but it's terrible for technological advancement, cultural development, or solving complex problems." Vexitar was starting to look frustrated. "Your evaluation of our methods is irrelevant. We have superior technology and military force." "Do you, though?" asked Dr. Amy Brooks, who was part of the human delegation. "Because from what we've observed, your technology is very good at doing exactly what it was designed to do, but it's terrible at adapting to new situations." "What do you mean?" Vexitar demanded. "Well, for example, one of our teenagers hacked into your entire communication system using a laptop and an internet connection. Your security was perfect against the kind of attacks you expected, but completely helpless against an approach you hadn't seen before." As if summoned by the conversation, the meeting room screens suddenly lit up with a video call from Ryan Bell, who was calling in from his garage. "Hey everyone," Ryan said cheerfully. "Hope you don't mind me crashing the party. I wanted to show Commander Vexitar something cool." "Mr. Bell," Helen sighed, "this is a formal diplomatic meeting. I know, but check this out." Ryan's screen showed the Zephyrian fleet overhead, I've been analyzing their ship designs and I figured out why they've been having so many technical problems lately. On the alien flagship, Sub-Commander Zekra was frantically trying to figure out how a human was broadcasting directly to their most secure communication channel. Your ships are amazing pieces of engineering, Ryan continued, but they're designed by people who never had to deal with creative problem solving. Everything works perfectly as long as nothing unexpected happens. But the moment someone does something you didn't plan for, your whole system gets confused. To demonstrate his point, Ryan started playing music through the alien ship's internal speakers. Not loud or obnoxious music, just a gentle jazz tune. But the alien computers couldn't figure out how to classify it. Was it a communication, a weapon, an attack? The ship systems started automatically adjusting their defensive settings, trying to respond to the threat of smooth jazz. Warning lights flashed. Alarms beeped. The entire fleet went into defensive mode because of a saxophone solo. See what I mean? Ryan said. Your technology is perfect, but it's not flexible. It can't handle anything that wasn't specifically programmed into it. In the meeting room, Vextar was watching his fleet panic over background music. His perfect military formation was dissolving into chaos because of a song. "This is impossible," he said quietly. "No," Helen replied gently. "This is creativity. This is what happens when you encourage people to think differently instead of just following orders." The moment that changed everything came from an unexpected source. Pete Johnson, a maintenance worker who had been fixing the air conditioning in the UN building, stuck his head into the meeting room. "Excuse me," Pete said, "but are you folks having trouble with your spaceships?" Everyone turned to look at him. Pete was wearing work clothes, carrying a toolbox, and looked like he had never been in a formal meeting in his life. "I was watching on the TV in the break room," Pete continued, "and it looks like your ships are having some kind of system overload. Mind if I take a look?" Vextar stared at the human maintenance worker. "You think you can repair Zephyrian technology?" "I don't know," Pete said honestly. "But I've been fixing broken things for 30 years. Usually when something's acting up like that, it just needs someone to look at it with fresh eyes." 20 minutes later, Pete Johnson was on the alien flagship, with his toolbox looking at the most advanced technology in the galaxy. The Zephyrian engineers watched in amazement as Pete ignored all their complex diagnostic equipment and started examining the system with his eyes and hands. "There's your problem," Pete said, pointing to a connection that looked perfect to the alien engineers. "This coupling is too tight. Your whole system is designed so precisely that it can't handle any variation. When something unexpected comes through, it locks up because it's trying to be too perfect." Pete loosened the connection by exactly 1/4 turn, added a small piece of what humans call duct tape to absorb vibrations, and sprayed a tiny amount of WD-40 on a joint that looked fine but sounded wrong to his experienced ears. The ship's systems immediately calmed down. The jazz music continued playing, but now the computers simply classified it as background noise and ignored it. "How did you know to do that?" asked the chief Zephyrian engineer. Pete shrugged. 30 years of fixing things teaches you that sometimes the best solution isn't the most complicated one. Sometimes you just need to give a system room to breathe. On Earth, people watched as a maintenance worker with a high school education solved a problem that had stumped alien super engineers. It was the perfect example of human adaptability beating alien perfection. In the UN meeting room, Vexitar sat in stunned silence. His invasion had failed completely. His technology had been outmatched by creativity. His warriors had been defeated by technique and kindness. And now, his most advanced systems had been fixed by a human with duct tape and common sense. "Commander," Helen said softly, "I think it's time we talked about what happens next." 6 months after the day the Zephyrian fleet arrived, Earth looked very different from space. The alien ships were still there, hovering above major cities, but they weren't conquest vessels anymore. They had become the most popular tourist attraction in human history. Former Supreme Commander Vextar, who now insisted people call him just Vex, was sitting in a small studio in New York recording his daily podcast. The show was called Humans Are Weird and was broadcast to 43 different star systems. Today's topic was human breakfast foods and why they made no sense from a nutritional efficiency standpoint. So today I want to talk about something called pancakes, Vex said into his microphone. Humans take grain, mix it with liquid, heat it on a flat surface, then cover it with tree syrup and call it a meal. By any logical standard, this should be terrible. But somehow it tastes amazing and makes humans happy. I still don't understand it. His co-host was Ryan Bell, who had become something of a celebrity after hacking the alien fleet. Vex, you're thinking about it wrong again. Pancakes aren't about nutrition, they're about the experience, the smell, the taste, the fact that someone made them for you because they care about you. This is what I mean when I say humans are weird, Vex replied. You turn everything into emotions. Even food becomes about feelings instead of just fuel. The podcast had started as Vex's attempt to understand what had gone wrong with his invasion. It had turned into the most popular entertainment show in the galaxy, with billions of listeners from dozens of different species. Everyone wanted to understand how humans worked. Meanwhile, at the Pentagon, Commander Lisa Stone was dealing with problems she never could have imagined when she joined the military. Her biggest challenge wasn't defending Earth from aliens, it was managing the traffic jams caused by alien tourists who wanted to visit human military bases. Ma'am, reported Lieutenant Danny Martinez, we have 37 different alien species requesting tours of our facilities this week. The Corellians want to see our weapons testing. The Blithians want to observe our training exercises. And the Vendakians just want to watch our soldiers play poker. Lisa rubbed her temples. Danny, when I trained for this job, nobody mentioned that we'd be running a cosmic bed and breakfast. There's more, ma'am. Betty Clark wants to set up a self-defense class for alien visitors. She says some of the warrior species have terrible technique and someone could get hurt. 6 months ago, Lisa would have been horrified by the idea of teaching military techniques to alien invaders. Now she just sighed and added it to her growing list of impossible things that had become normal. Fine, but make sure we have liability insurance. If Betty accidentally defeats another galactic champion, I don't want the paperwork. In Los Angeles, Chef Carlos Rivera was facing his own success problems. His food truck had become so popular with alien visitors that he'd had to open 3 restaurants just to handle the demand. Today he was teaching a cooking class to a group of Zephyrian engineers who were trying to understand why human food tasted better than their nutrition blocks. The secret ingredient, Carlos explained to his alien students, is that you have to care about what you're making. Food isn't just fuel. It's a way of showing love. One of the Zephyrians, an engineer named Kextal, raised his hand. Chef Rivera, our analysis shows that adding love to food should make no chemical difference. Yet every dish we prepare using your methods tastes better than our calculations indicate it should. How is this possible? Carlos smiled. Kextal, you're still thinking like an engineer. Love isn't an ingredient you can measure. It's about paying attention to what you're doing, tasting as you go, adjusting things based on what feels right. It's about making something that will make people happy instead of just feeding them. But how do you know what feels right? Practice, experience, and caring about the people who are going to eat your food. The Zephyrian took careful notes, still trying to turn human intuition into something that could be measured and quantified. It was a project that kept dozens of alien scientists busy and would probably take them decades to figure out. At the United Nations, diplomat Helen Parker was dealing with what had become known as the friendship crisis. So many alien species wanted to establish peaceful relations with Earth that the UN building couldn't handle all the ambassadors. They were building a new facility specifically for interstellar diplomacy. The good news, Helen told her staff, is that we've accidentally become the diplomatic capital of this part of the galaxy. The bad news is that I have no idea what we're doing. Her assistant, Mark Chen, looked at the schedule. Ma'am, today you're meeting with representatives from the Corellian Empire, the Blithian Federation, and something called the United Moons of Xerion. They all want to establish trade agreements. What do they want to trade? The Corellians want to exchange military technology for cooking lessons. The Blithians want our entertainment media in exchange for advanced medical equipment. And the Zirions want to trade rare minerals for permission to send their children to human schools. Helen paused. They want to send their kids to our schools? Apparently, human education encourages creative thinking and problem-solving in ways that alien education systems don't. Several species think learning from humans might help their children become better innovators. Dr. Amy Brooks was running the newly created Department of Interspecies Relations from a building that used to be a shopping mall. She had started with a staff of 5 people. Now she had 300 humans and about 50 aliens working together to figure out how different species could cooperate instead of conquer each other. The interesting thing, Amy told her research team, is that we're not just teaching aliens about human culture. We're learning things about ourselves that we never noticed before. Her alien research partner, a Zephyrian scientist named Dekra, nodded. Humans do many things automatically that other species have to think about consciously. Your ability to adapt, to find humor in difficult situations, to form emotional connections with strangers. These are not common traits in the galaxy. What do you mean? Most species, including mine, are very good at perfecting systems that work. Humans are good at creating new systems when the old ones don't work. That's much rarer and much more valuable than we realized. Meanwhile, Pete Johnson had become the most famous maintenance worker in galactic history. He now spent his time traveling between alien worlds, fixing problems that had stumped entire teams of engineers. His approach was always the same. Ignore the complicated explanations. Look at what was actually happening and apply common sense. Today, he was on a Corellian space station, fixing an environmental system that had been malfunctioning for 6 months. The problem, Pete explained to the Corellian engineers, is that you built this system to be perfect. But perfect systems can't handle the real world, because the real world is messy. He added a simple pressure valve that allowed the system to adjust to small variations automatically. Sometimes the best engineering isn't about making things perfect. It's about making things that can handle being imperfect. The Corellians watched in amazement as their environmental readings stabilized, for the first time in months. Pete's solution was so simple that none of their sophisticated computer models had even considered it. "How did you know to do that?" asked the chief engineer. Pete packed up his tools. 30 years of fixing things that were designed by people who never had to use them. You learn that complicated doesn't always mean better. As Earth entered its 7th month as the accidental center of galactic civilization, humans were starting to understand what they had accomplished. They hadn't defeated an alien invasion through military might or superior technology. They had won by being themselves. Their refusal to be intimidated had confused the aliens. Their creativity had fascinated them. Their adaptability had impressed them. And their willingness to share their culture had turned enemies into friends. The galaxy was a much more interesting place now that humans were part of it. And as Vex often said on his podcast, before we met humans, we thought conquest was about taking things from other species. Humans taught us that the best way to get what you want is to give people something they didn't know they needed. The Abar invasion that was supposed to add Earth to the Zephyrian Empire had instead added laughter, creativity, and friendship to the entire galaxy. And somehow, everyone was better off for it. As Pete Johnson always said when people asked him about fixing the alien ships, sometimes the best solution is the one nobody thought to try. Earth had tried friendship, and it worked better than anyone expected.